Hi, I'm Ina, certified business and life coach, founder of Thrive with Ina podcast, and a columnist for Intentional Living magazine. There's always room for improvement in your current situation, whether it's life, business, or relationships. I help women around the world to get equipped with the exact tools that are needed to propel to the next level. On this podcast, you can learn all the encouraging stories of incredible entrepreneurs, their hardships, and the exact tools to achieve success. You can also search for mindful meditation episodes that can help you get grounded in the chaos of life and business. You can get full access to my coaching platform and this podcast on www.thrivewithina.com. And now, tune into a new episode of Thrive with Ina podcast, and happy listening. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Thrive with Ina podcast. And we are super excited to have a wonderful guest today right outside of the United States. We're no longer home anymore. We are now entering the territories of the beautiful land of the UK. And we have Laura Mai as a guest today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
So happy to have you. A little introduction about Laura Mai is that Laura Mai is a somatic coach and a founder of Root Beginnings, which is a wonderful concept that she's going to talk all about and give us other perspectives and ideas about what led her to be in this space right now and how her life has shaped all of the identities and the hats that she has to wear. So stay on for this entire episode and listen to all of the helpful tips and tricks that she's going to tell us about how her life has turned out and led her to this moment. So again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let's dive right in. Tell us all about yourself.
Oh gosh. Well, as we were just joking, of course, I'm accompanied with my cup of tea as I'm here in the UK. But my journey didn't start here. I actually was brought up in Jamaica. And so I was brought up in the mountains of Jamaica in the middle of the bush, as we say over there. So
as I just learned the new term, the bush gal.
Bush gal. That's right.
I love it.
So I started life running around barefoot in the mountains. And we had a big farm. There, and it was just a beautiful start to life, which I feel really grateful for. And then moved to the chillier side of the world in the UK, and have been here for the last sort of 20 years or so, hence the accent. So you never know that I'm from Jamaica.
I was blown away when you said that. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I know. As you said in the introduction, many hats, many dimensions, many different parts that we all carry, I think, that we all have.
Tell us a little bit about how your journey started with now I'm starting to get the idea where the Root Beginnings came from. It's your returning to yourself, returning to your roots, right? So I'm not going to take it away from you. So go ahead, tell us.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. And actually, before I say kind of more about what it actually is, I feel like Root Beginnings is so much about the feeling. So picture your kind of typical day. For many of us, it's moving from A to B really quickly in a really busy kind of, I could imagine this sort of beehive of like buzzing kind of constantly. And I think that a lot of us live in that way. We kind of zoom through our days and without creating sort of any space. So you sort of have that picture and you have that feeling of like, oh gosh, I just need to get things done. I need to hurry and rush through life. Now, imagine just rooting your feet on the ground, and maybe we can both do this together, but just taking a moment to put both feet on the ground and maybe, wiggle the toes and just feel the ground beneath you. And just taking a couple of slower, deeper breaths and breathing all the way from the feet through the body into the heart space, deeply into the nose, and then like a long exhale out. And just doing that a couple of times. And just noticing the shift in how you feel from that initial sense of busyness and moving so quickly to just slowing down a little bit intentionally and feeling that sense of rootedness. That's what I want to create through Root Beginnings. And that's what I have been doing in the last few years, is essentially to create a sanctuary of space for really busy individuals who have lost touch with their authentic sense of self, their who they are at the core. Yes, and me too. And we all have, because there is so much going on. There is so much demand and expectation in this world to perform, and to kind of almost so enshrined by the shoulds. We should be doing this. We should be doing more. And taking just some time just to slow that right down and come back to actually, what do we feel we want to do? What could we do with our unique gifts? But I never took the time to do that. So I started off in Jamaica and feeling freedom and running around and feeling so myself, to really over the last 20 years becoming so far from who I was because of, just working so extremely hard or going in a direction which I felt I should, and because other people were telling me that's probably what I should be doing. So trying to unpack that takes a lot, I think. And I try and do that through Root Beginnings with coaching and workshops and retreats.
Yeah, it takes 20 years is a very long time to be in that grind of constant need, and especially in a high performing position that you were in, and just taking a step back from that. How was the transition for you from a very high demand and a high performing position in the corporate world to returning to yourself, to that touch of the feet on the ground? And I can totally relate to that. I've been overperforming for so many years, and then when I went a couple of years ago, and I've done retreats everywhere, but I think Costa Rica was the most connecting for me, where I could just have my feet on the ground and do absolutely nothing other than just take in the nature, like the raw jungle, the feeling of it all. So I could totally feel your concept, feel your thought, feel your idea with reflecting to my own experiences. So how was it for you? What was the moment that you realized that high stress, the high performance, the high should environment needed to change, and you needed to go back to that girl with the feet on the ground?
Well, sadly, my story was one of, because I wasn't listening to my body at all. And I know this sounds a bit silly now, especially with all that I know now, but at the time I was so in my head. So everything was kind of mind driven, as in that was the expectation, the measurement of success, external kind of pursuit of what I thought good looked like. So I wasn't connected at all to what my body was telling me, which was actually exhaustion. It was tired, it was burnt out. It was like, I can't keep up with this. This is relentless. And so by ignoring those kind of subtle signs to start with, maybe like an odd headache or two, or just feeling really tired and just wanting to rest all of the time, I actually suffered from quite extreme mental health issues just because I couldn't cope anymore. I literally started to have breakdowns, and what I've learned to know it as a kind of a complete breakdown of the soul, because it just felt like everything was just not as it should be, and I couldn't figure out why everything on the outside looked kind of exactly as it should, but on the inside I felt anything but. So I had quite an extreme and intense few weeks of that happening. And I think it was in that moment that I was like, okay, this can't be right. Like, you can't push through this. This is not something you can push through when it gets to that kind of severity. So from there, then I just began to take steps. Okay, well, what else is there? What else do I need to do? What's the next step? And I think that's really where I started to untangle this concept of, needing to know all the steps ahead and plan, and just think, I don't actually know. I've only ever wanted to be chief of staff. That was like the goal. And now I'm faced with this complete kind of disruption of that. I don't know. And I just started to peel it right back to, okay, well, what do I just need to do next? And that just became really clear to me to take some time out so I could just figure it out. And, you know, I was in a unique position to be able to do that for a couple of months. And it felt extremely uncomfortable, honestly, going from the intensity of what I was doing, but the complete discomfort of all of it in so many different ways, to really just kind of taking some space and looking at myself and meeting myself where I was and saying, hi, you know, like, hello, finally. I know that, again, it sounds funny, but it's just, you go through your day in such a busy way that we don't give ourselves time to connect to our minds and our bodies and connect the two, most importantly. So it felt raw and messy and strange and uncomfortable, but I knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. So it's still a journey.
It's a lifelong journey. I feel like it's such a beautiful place to be, even though it's messy and raw and you're out of your comfort zone and out of the unknown. But I feel like when we do come to these moments where you're no longer a one-dimensional robot that's performing for the economy, right? You become a human again.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the lines, we as society and humans are trained to become robots, and we perform for the economy, we perform in this rat race. And when we take that time, and most of us unfortunately come to the conclusions like this in a state of a breakdown. But one of my yoga teachers, very first of my yoga teachers actually, taught me this phrase, and I don't know if it was a quote or what, but breakdowns are opportunities for breakthroughs. She taught me that. And she said, you're going to have, once you start the journey, you're going to have lots of breakdowns. And I was like, what? No. No. Well, I'm fine. I'm very strong. I'm from Soviet Union. I'm made to do this. Right? It's like, you're going to have lots of breakdowns. But remember that all of them are opportunities for breakthroughs. And it's so amazing to see how your breakthrough is blossoming and helping others as well. So now that we've learned a little bit about your breakthrough and your the origin of root beginnings, tell us, what do you envision for that concept? What is it like? What is the shape it's taking, and what are you planning? Or like, not necessarily planning on the big scale, like I don't need a 5-year plan or anything, like what are the feelings, what are the ideas that you have?
Yeah, totally. And just on the 5-year plan point, I think that, again, you know, I've been through the experience of feeling the pressure to have that. You know, what is your 5-year plan? What are you going to do? Like, you know, and that puts a lot of pressure. And I think that in this day and age, firstly, things are moving so fast that frankly, in like 6 months' time, your plan may be irrelevant. So I think, you know, I don't know, like it's just my experience with how things go.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I've always known that those 3, 5, 10-year plans are all made up. It's made up numbers. It's made up numbers. It's projections. It's this game of continuously needing to perform or having to perform. And it's really funny because now I'm creating marketing strategy on a really large corporate level and scale. And people are like, so what is it like to create business strategy for a startup on a very large scale? And I'm like, I've done that for my businesses on a smaller scale, and now I'm doing it on a larger scale, but it's still the same thing. It's still like, we're making shit up as we go, and then we're pushing ourselves to make it happen. And it's beautiful, but also stressful. Like, how do we balance? How do we, now I think I'm making a segue into your, you know, elaboration on many hats and many roles and all those pieces that come together. Like, as humans, we have to figure out how to balance it all.
Yeah. And also, I think the word I've been working with a lot is adapt to it all. You know, how do we learn how to adapt in a world that's moving so fast in lots of ways? And also in a world that, you know, we can be multiple things. You know, culturally, I think just historically, there was always this path in earlier generations where you sort of, you do one thing, you get that one job and you're in it for 30 years or something. And it just, there's a very sort of set way of doing things. And, over the years, that's really shifted. So now there's a lot of opportunity to be lots of different things. But that's scary. Certainly the experience I've had, that's scary to sort of embrace that curiosity about, perhaps wearing a different hat or trying something that feels more aligned to who you are or who you want to be. But perhaps that hasn't been done before by someone in your kind of network or circle. So it's like, I don't know, what step do I take to go there and to explore that? So I think that sense of adaptability and embracing your kind of holistic sense of self and the experiences that we've gained, through the years, they're all relevant. I know I went through, a long time of feeling a real resentment for the work that I had been part of. So I was in finance for a long time and regulation and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that was so against who I am and what I know to be true now. But all of that experience has now played into being able to pull Root Beginnings together, because I was learning about finance. I learned about structure and organization and the legal side of things. So I'm a firm believer that all of the experiences in our lives are relevant. And it's just about being able to pull those together to almost kind of form the tapestry of the thing that you want to do. What part of that could I pull in here? What connection could I bring in here? And it kind of, when you're prepared to be curious about that and keep asking those questions for yourself, what do I truly want? Does this really feel aligned? Then the connections just sort of start happening. Like, Brene Brown always describes connection like stars in the sky, that sort of like sparkle of connection, or that twinkle of connection. And I think that's exactly right, in the same way that you and I met, for intentional living. And, it just, when you follow a passion for writing for us and sharing what we do, it brings you together with other like-minded people who want to do similar or the same things. And we all sort of support each other to help each other rise. And I think that's really kind of what it comes down to with Root Beginnings. Like, the first thing is always, who are you at the root? And you figure that out by coming back to your passions, the things which really bring you joy, and literally like reading a book or horse riding or art or whatever it is. But it's those things that when you're doing them, you don't feel like you're thinking that much. And so the creativity just sort of starts to flow and you think, what could I be doing? So I think it's creating that space again for the shift of I can't and I should to I can and I could, and igniting that possibility through that process.
Yeah. So beautifully said. I love it. I feel like I've had a wild week this week between all the businesses and all the, issues of a living and running business. And just listening to your talking and your, delivery, I feel way better. Talking for 20 minutes. This is amazing. Something better. But then again, I also want to pack my suitcase and go to Costa Rica tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll meet you there.
I love it so much.
But so like the just on the Costa Rica point, and because some people might be listening and I can't go to Costa Rica. Like, I can't go and pack my bags to that wonderful place. I can't go to Colombia. And I really felt that too. And so, but creating space can be in the big ways, the small ways, and really any way that matters to you, so just taking a weekend away, just taking an afternoon, just for yourself, going for a long walk along the beach. I mean, you'll have a great spot to do that where you are. We have the forest close by here, and it's just, I always used to feel that I had to be all the way over there, to find what I was looking for. And actually you can create that exactly where you are, just having the patience to think, okay, just need a couple of hours to go into the forest or to, take a longer walk. I definitely feel like nature is the secret ingredient that we often forget with this as well. Just being with ourselves in nature and just letting that kind of infuse. Yeah, it's just, it can be so healing and beneficial.
It's really wild. In a lot of cultures, it's almost mandatory. Like forest bathing in Japan is almost mandatory.
Yeah.
As a society, they exercise forest bathing. Same thing in Germany.
Yeah.
They all, I'm actually marrying a German, so I've been learning so much about their culture, even though I was born in Germany, but I was born on the Soviet side. So I was born to the Soviet Union as a baby, brought to after Germany. But my fiance is teaching me a lot about Germans, and they are very in tune with their mental health and the nature element of it all. Having the relaxation time or having nature walks, the forest bathing, and lots of cultures around the world are like that. I feel like we are in the United States, we definitely have forgotten that nature is the answer to a lot of questions that we might be seeking. But I wanted to ask you about your time that you took the transition from the high performing role to finding yourself, to finding nonlinear paths that you could add into your story, into your adventure, into your journey. Do you think, besides yourself, what were the challenging points? Do you think culturally things like that are accepted now more than they used to be? Or do you think that culturally your shift in to a non-linear path was more challenging than it should have been? Like, I don't know even what I'm asking for or fishing for. Like, culturally, how is that something that's accepted in the UK? Because in the United States, I think it's being more and more accepted and embraced, the whole nonlinear path, and a lot of coaches are talking about it. But I don't know really much about the UK.
I think that it all starts from your own experience too of what that could look like.
Okay.
Because if you're kind of surrounded by a family, for example, who have kind of done lots of different things and changing roles, for example, or kind of just have that way of living, then that kind of infuses a lot more in what you think is you can do.
Okay.
But I think generally speaking, like we were saying before, there's a pretty like rigid structure around which you're kind of taught, in the UK and I think in other places too. Like when you go to school, you immediately start getting asked, okay, what do you want to study at university? Yeah. Okay, you're at university. Like, what is that? Is that a lawyer? Is that, are you going to go into finance? Like all of those kind of like, successful careers which are all fantastic. It's not a judgment on those, but it immediately kind of closes your imagination and your intuition, because you sort of, when you're asked questions that funnel you a certain way, I think at that age, we just want to belong. That was at least my experience. It's like, if everyone is going in that funnel, then I want to go there too. I don't want to go and do something else which doesn't kind of conform to that. So I think that was happening a lot, certainly with my experience. And so when you then go through university, then it's like, okay, well, what job are you going to get? Or maybe there's this sort of sense of a gap year, but then you need to go into a job or you need to go into a master's. It's like, it's always like that kind of next step. And then typically it really is, well, when are you going to get married? Or are you going to buy a house? It just and in the kind of, in the trajectory that people are used to. So it's like those questions are just the kind of, it's almost as though you feel like people are reading off a sheet of what your kind of life should look like. And, the next question from that. And so when I started to feel at odds with exactly that path, there's very little support to kind of explore that. But I think that can come from our own feelings with it, if that makes sense. Like I was resistant to ask for help, or I was resistant to say, this doesn't feel right, because from the outside, everything looked like exactly as it should be. So when I was starting to say like, this doesn't feel right, or in my case had quite, intense kind of visceral body responses to what I was doing, I felt like a failure,
Yeah.
honestly. I really did. I felt like I'm failing at this. I'm not strong enough. I'm not resilient. This is all on me.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of now I would know, differently, and I would approach that so differently. But when you're in it, I think that we can internalize that. So I think it's not to say that the nonlinear path isn't accepted or you can't explore it, but I think it really comes down to our behavior, our approach, and kind of how we can cultivate the courage to be able to ask those questions and be curious. And
Yeah.
we're not taught that when we're younger. We just don't have that muscle or that toolkit. So it suddenly feels like that's a huge thing that's right in front of us. And I think then many of us decide not to go down that route, because sometimes it really is easier to stay comfortably in the discomfort, like knowing that something doesn't feel right, but you know what, I'm just going to stay here anyway, because over here feels like a lot more work, even though your soul yearns for it. That gap between where you want to go can be extremely challenging.
Yeah.
So I fully respect and have a deep compassion for those who are kind of in that mode of like, I really want to get there, but I just can't do that right now. But my mission is to reignite that possibility wherever I can.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I was just talking to my therapist about it, and we are talking about something that's been looming as a to-do task for me for about a year. And she's like, "Can we agree that it's not a today task?" And I was like,
Yes.
"You got it."
Fine by me.
Fine by me. I am gonna be a lot happier if it's not a today task. So here we go. Not a today task, sure. I used to be the today only kind of person. I was brought up as well in a very structured way in a military family. So for me to put something off onto tomorrow was not an option. And, growing up and learning how to set boundaries with my own family and cultural expectations was definitely a journey, and I'm still in it. And I take all the help I can.
Yeah, and I think that's such a fantastic approach, and I love that kind of not today. And I think there's a difference between being intentional
Yeah.
and really being aware of what actions you can take, day by day. Whereas there's things which you just have to just learn how to be patient with it and know that these shifts are
Mm-hmm.
huge and they take time. And that's why I always just feel like it was one step at a time. It's,
Mm-hmm.
let me just try this, and always from a place of curiosity. And I think one of the things I've really deeply learned is that before, like a couple of years ago, I was so fixated on needing to know everything. Like if I didn't have the solution, or if I didn't know where I was going, then who am I? What am I doing? I gave myself such a hard time for that. Whereas now I really approach things with a curiosity and just asking the questions, like constantly, like, does this feel right? I don't know how to do that. Who could I ask? Or, whatever, but just like keeping that dialogue and asking questions, as opposed to giving myself a hard time for not knowing the answer or the solution. And I found that kind of starts opening up the pathway, but literally one step at a time. Like, I don't know what next month looks like, or the month after, hence not having the 5-year plan or 6-month plan, but it's just
Yeah.
what feels right in the kind of the next couple of months. And let's kind of, you focus towards that and keep leaning into what really, feels right, based on your intuition.
Yeah. I totally hear all that, and I feel it all the way. As you're talking about it, I'm like, yep. My head is nodding so much that you could tell that I'm totally seeing and feeling through that experience. You just recently had your first retreat, right?
So going on it in India, in April. Yeah,
Okay.
so we were going to do it in Colombia, in
Okay.
September.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we couldn't because of some unforeseen circumstances with my retreat partner.
Okay.
But it's happening in September, albeit in a different format in Colombia. But yes, we're heading to India in April. to Amritsar, and then to a little spot called Basanti in the foothills of the Himalayas. So
Wow.
very excited. And I've never actually been to India before myself, but I just
Right.
feel extremely honored and grateful to be able to hold space in such a wonderful part of the world.
That's amazing. How do you plan a retreat? Like, how do you think of the the curriculum that you want to introduce to the students that come on the retreat? Is there like what is the thought process when you sit down and think of hosting a retreat and inviting other people to join you?
Mhm.
You come from the experience that you would like to see on a retreat yourself, or is it something that how do you prepare?
Yeah. So aside from the kind of fundamentals of like needing to have somewhere booked, like basic logistics and all of that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
which needs a plan, and and kind of some forward thinking with that, my approach to the day to day in a retreat is very much go with the flow. Because when I took some time out for the first time when I was in Colombia myself, I always tell the story because on my first day there, I went straight to my retreat partner and said, to her on day one with my little notepad, and I was writing down, okay, what do you need me to do? Like, what do we do today at 9 a.m.? Let's get the schedule. And she kind of laughed. She laughed at me and she just said, you'll learn, but that's just not how things work here at all. But the concept of going with the flow was completely alien to me in that time. I just, having come from a world where things were so structured in lots of ways, or at least so packed, I should say.
Mhm.
They were just so packed that I didn't know what flow even meant. And I didn't know what it felt like just to be with myself. I was always in do mode. So my hope for any retreat that I run is to offer that sense of reconnecting with the person's unique sense of flow, because that's different for everybody. So the group who are coming to India, for example, there may be one or two who are just exhausted, and they actually just need to really deeply rest for a couple of days, and don't want to get up at 7 a.m. for a flow or for a yoga flow or go on an exhibition or whatever it might be. They might just want to rest and read. And so there's offerings throughout each day, but absolutely no obligation to do it. So the theme is always reconnecting with your unique sense of flow and tuning
Yeah.
into what your body needs when you wake up. What do you need? Do you want to go and do a little movement, or do you want to just like nestle down with a cup of tea and read your book? And all of that is okay. But
Yeah.
if you can come away, if anyone can come away from one of my retreats having deeply connected with that and being able to listen to their body going into their kind of day to day when they get home, that would be a success for me.
Yeah. I love that. I've never been to India either, but it definitely sounds like your retreat is going to be much needed for every participant that's joining. I love hosting retreats. That's why I asked. My favorite of all locations is always Costa Rica. I've held
Mm.
retreats in Europe and various locations, and Crete is probably my number two favorite. But um, out of all the places that I've been myself and I've gone myself and joined other retreats and hosted my own retreats, I'd say Costa Rica is always number one. Is something about being in like the most basic of nature with
Mm-hmm.
no commercial needs or wants, like
Yes.
no hustle, and just like the little fact of how the locals love nature so much that it's an unspoken rule that when people go to the beach at night, you must not use a flashlight
Mm.
because of the light pollution. They observe no light pollution rule. And it's an unspoken rule for them, but they teach the tourists as well that when you go to the beach at night to watch the stars, you don't turn a flashlight on. So it
Oh,
doesn't actually
beautiful.
pollute the nature with the light, which, like, that one little detail that
Mm.
might not mean much to a lot of people, especially, I guess, tourists.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're there and you appreciate the nature and the basic nature, I'd
Yeah.
say that really, really meant a lot to me, that
Oh, yeah.
there's such a group of
Yes.
people that value something so simple as the stars.
Yes. But so, so simple as the stars, but like so profound,
Yes.
and you're so right. I think that that kind of connection with nature in its most kind of rustic, raw, beautiful surroundings, that you just kind of let yourself be in it, and noticing those sorts of things, sitting on the beach and watching the stars, just again, is just, I just don't feel like we emphasize the simple joys, each day, that we could do more of if we allowed ourselves to.
Yeah.
So again, whether it's Costa Rica, India, or your back garden, but just kind of like looking up at the stars and just taking a moment to do that. I think that's what these retreats are all about, I think. And,
Yeah,
just being able to appreciate those small things and learn how you can do that each day.
absolutely. What would be something that you could give as an advice to someone who is feeling maybe the burnout, maybe that transformational breakdown moment where a breakthrough needs to happen, but maybe comfort zone is winning over, or just, overall advice, something
Mm.
genuine to share from your experience with our listeners?
I think do one thing that feels really good for you. So, just as an example, on Tuesday night, I was feeling pretty disconnected and stressed out, to be honest, about a couple of different things. And I put on soca music. Um, and it is just the most fun, like, type of music for me, that I could just dance around in my kitchen for hours to. And that's kind of what I did. And
I
I
love that.
put it on like full blast and I just danced because it connected me back to Jamaica. It connected me back to my energy. It allowed the funkiness that I'd been feeling to just dissipate. And I felt so much clearer and more connected. And I think just starting there, whatever it is for you. And again, just to be really mindful that if you're experiencing burnout, if you're experiencing the more intense scale of that, then asking for some support and some help, number one, even if that's kind of a partner or someone really close to you, as a step one, is really important. So I'd really encourage sharing if you're feeling that. But wherever you are in your journey, the next thing is do that one thing that really lights you up and makes you feel alive. That real sense of like, oh my gosh, I feel so good right now. And only you know what that is. And like I said, it can be as simple as music, going on a horse ride, walking in nature, doing some art, singing at the top of your voice, whatever it is, it can be so accessible. And I know it sounds super simple, but if you can commit to doing that for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe every day, every other day, just notice how you feel, like just creating space to do something just for you that connects you and makes you feel alive. I would almost bet that you start getting a little bit of clarity about what you want to do next.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's a great segue into the question that I forgot to ask you in the very beginning. Not everyone knows what somatic coach means. So if
Mm.
you could tell our listeners, what does that mean? What does that embody? And I think the segue of you dancing around your kitchen is really a great way to enter that conversation.
Totally. And so a somatic coach brings really to the forefront the awareness of the body.
Mm.
So soma means body, and it means that sort of sense of embodiment, as you said. And we were talking earlier in the conversation about me being fully in my mind, and I think a lot of us live very much in our minds.
Yep.
So somatic coaching can take lots of different forms and approaches. But for me, because I'm a yoga teacher and a breathwork practitioner as
Right.
well, I fuse all of that together. And so just to give an example with how some of my sessions would look, we would start by doing some breath work, taking some time to just become aware of how the body feels, like really dropping down into it with the breath and noticing if we're feeling any tension or, feeling our hearts are feeling kind of, just noticing the emotions, the feelings, the tension, how our body's feeling in that moment, noticing what's around us. and through the breath, just letting things go, and then arriving in a space that kind of feels much more in alignment with mind and body. Because I think certainly from a coaching perspective, people can kind of arrive in a session having had a super stressful, busy day, and they just kind of come into the conversation just with their mind.
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk about this, and it's all because it's all up here. Whereas the type of transformation that I look for with my clients always comes from the heart. Like, it's a real heart-led transformation, and you can't do that unless you're connected to the body in a much deeper way. So somatic coach uses those different techniques to help people really connect with how the body is feeling, where the energy is, and the kind of space around us, that sense of awareness that we just don't get when we're constantly up in our minds.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. I mean, I started to practice yoga 9 years ago because of that particular reason, that I needed movement for the body that wasn't hurting me, because I've tried all kinds of different movements and I have fibromyalgia. So for me, movement in itself is painful. So I needed to find something that doesn't. And yoga, dancing, and all of other somatic healing modalities were really helpful to me for sure. So I love that you pivoted so much from this high performing corporate job to being a somatic coach and helping people feel better. And I just love the breakthrough that you had from your breakdown, that is not only helping you, but is helping others around you. And that's really amazing.
Thank you. And I think that the important thing for me, because I think this last couple of months have been a bit of a journey too, because I've kind of reintegrated back into a part-time role. And I think that for a while that felt a little bit at odds with what I was pivoting towards, because I hadn't figured out how to integrate these different parts of my experiences and my kind of holistic self, I guess, together. It either had to be one or the other. Well, I'm doing that or I'm doing this. And I think it's just an important thing to say that if you can, again, keep that kind of sense of curiosity, it's like, well, actually, I can show up as a coach in that role. It doesn't have to be a formal kind of coach, but coaching lives and exists through us all the time. So could I bring that into this role in some way? And what am I learning here that actually I can bring into this? And so again, that sort of continuous sense of shaping and integrating and just embracing all of ourselves is such a kind of valuable tool to continuously evolve and expand in the way that we want to.
Yeah. And I feel like while you're doing that, I'm sure you have to educate people on the way because of the questions that may arise, right? Like, I can totally relate to that. I've just taken on, we've spoken about it before the podcast, that I've taken on a really big position with a medical facility as their lead marketer and strategy creator. And I've been coaching so much and teaching yoga and running my own businesses. And everyone's first question is, no more yoga, no more coaching. So that's it. That's all you're doing. You're going to be a marketing strategist. I'm like, it does not have to be one or the other.
Right.
It's such a concept that's wild to people, for people to understand. And I feel like an educator most of the time now, explaining to people that I don't necessarily have to be just one. I can integrate my coaching skills into the new leading position, because also, if I wasn't coaching before, if I wasn't doing all these things and wearing all these hats, I probably wouldn't have gotten such a high position somewhere else that is helping me change lives in a different way.
Exactly.
It just all goes together. All of these non-linear paths are one path, which is our experience.
Yes. And especially if we get out of our own way in it, I think that's such a big thing too, is like, if you can allow yourself to think that way and just be like, okay, well, that's still part of me and that's still part of me. And actually, if I can just step out of there to go into here, it's then it can kind of a much more organic flow towards those things. And you can really start to experience the real kind of magical juice of who you are. Because you're like, wow, this is all me. This is great.
It's not one or the other. And and I really love that you've used the word curiosity throughout the podcast.
Hmm.
That I feel like the curiosity is literally what got me through every challenge and obstacle that I may have faced as an
Hmm.
ESL person living in the foreign country with no friends or family, and getting to where I am now on a non-linear journey, really. I mean, I have 3 different degrees in 3 totally different things. My first degree is in fashion design, my second degree is in political science, my third degree is an MBA in HR and marketing. So, I mean, if you
Wow.
ask a traditional person with that mindset of just doing one thing, they judge. And I've had a lot of that happen in life. And now I'm working in an addiction space. I mean, I never imagined being there. But all of these things that I've done in my life are giving me the insight and perspective into being a different person in this stage of my life, right? So,
Yes.
and I love that you
Love
are
that.
embracing your journey and experience and blending it back and forth, and the human experience.
Definitely. And I think it's like, it's also just giving ourselves permission to change if we want to, giving ourselves permission to pivot if something doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
You might in 6 months' time just be like, actually, this doesn't feel right. And that's okay. Giving ourselves that permission to not only change and pivot, but to be aware of the kind of season of our lives that we're in, and that changes. So
yeah,
it just, this time last year, it was a very different season for me in my life. So I'm asking myself different questions this year when I'm looking at the year ahead with Root Beginnings and what I want to do with it. It's different, and initially that was kind of scary and overwhelming. But I'm learning that everything changes all the time.
yeah,
We're constantly shifting and growing and expanding, and we just have to, again, that's why it keeps coming back to curiosity for me, because it's like, oh, I feel different. Okay, well, why is that? As opposed to kind of getting stuck in the kind of the fear of it. It's just, yeah, asking the question as opposed to always feeling you have to have the answer.
I love that. I love that you reignited the love for word curiosity for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm going to explore that a lot deeper after our podcast.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So let's tell our listeners how they can connect with you, where they can follow you, and if they're curious to explore your coaching services, how can they find you?
Definitely. So best thing is my website, which is root beginnings beginnings.co.uk, or on Instagram at root beginnings, all lowercase, one word. Yeah, message me on there directly, and I love to connect with people. So set up a call. There's a link in my bio, either on Instagram, LinkedIn, or on my website. And yeah, no obligations, just like, let's just connect and just check in and see where you are and how we can support each other.
Yeah, and I will link all of the links and the Instagram handle in the show notes, so listeners have an easier time connecting with you. And I'm really looking forward to all of the connections that can be made, especially since you and I met on such an interesting way. Both of us are contributors to this beautiful magazine that our joint friend Sarah founded and is running, and it's all about the intentional living.
Yes. Oh, it's
Yeah.
stunning. And I feel so honored to be part of it and part of that community. I think that's such a important thing to share, is that, curiosity leads to creativity, leads to community, because when you're in your creative flow, you're just meeting people that are fully aligned with that. And it leads to the connections like you and I and Sarah. And, before you know it, you're in New York at a launch or something. You're like, wow, is this happening?
It's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the things. I'm looking forward to all the things that we're going to accomplish and
Yes.
arrive at together and apart. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your journey and seeing your retreat and all of the things with you and Root Beginnings. And I'm really thankful for you coming on to the podcast today. And I really look forward to everyone learning your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.